Hello everyone, this is MC Deck Discussions and I'm Abby Small, and today we have another deck discussion with this time Tigra Aggression, and you can see here it has 42 cards in it and it's called Drawn to the Smell of Blood, and that's meant to indicate that there's quite a bit of card draw in this deck, but in relation to utilizing her hunting down her enemies, specifically minions, of course, because of the way her deck works with hunted, right? So let's go ahead and get started on a couple of initial important items for me. So in this case, I had some personal build restrictions. I banned all allies who draw cards, and I didn't allow myself to be able to stun the villain. So those were my my card restrictions that I had in this case, my build restrictions. And my goal is to draw a slew of cards and use the results to slay all enemies in her path. And so the only card draw then was occurring from the events and then also Blood Rage. Okay. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the allies that were included and why each one was included. So Brawn, a really great card for this deck. So Tigra, just look at her stats real fast, right? She has 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. So she's a bit weak on that thwarting. She does have a couple of thwart events that remove, a few threat each time. But overall, that's definitely not a strength of hers. So that we depend heavily on the allies to take care of that. And in this case, we actually are using the allies quite a bit to defeat minions that have hunted on them, because hunted has, in addition to hunted being able to grab a minion out of the discard pile or encounter deck and putting it into play with you and then stunning them, and it puts them into play, by the way, so any when revealed don't occur. But also it has this interrupt: when attached minion is defeated, ready Tigra. And so the allies were used for that quite a bit. So some very useful allies. We have Brawn. Every time he attacks, he only has a 1 attack, but every time he attacks, he also removes a threat from a scheme. So he takes care of 2 things at once, and he has 5 health. So you can utilize him, 4 times and then defend with him. So for a cost of 3, he ends up being really worth it. Bug, I had multiple times where Bug stayed in the game the entire game, but I think there was only 1 time where I just used him once and then defended with him. Otherwise, he stayed in for multiple turns, and like I said, a couple of times even the entire game out of my 10 out of my 10 gameplays. And then Professor X is in there for the confusing, so we can go down to alter ego at times. Same with Psylocke, giving us the ability to possibly do that twice. Both of whom also are very good at removing threat. Then Spider Girl gives us a chance to stun and confuse a minion, which allows us to continue to leave a minion in play and not have to defeat them too soon, so that we can continue to utilize Tigra's ability. So a quick reminder for those who haven't seen it in a while or don't know, right? So she has this on the hunt response. After the player phase begins, draw 1 card for each minion engaged with you to a maximum of 3 cards drawn. And also, by the way, each minion with a copy of Hunted attached loses guard, at least when we're on the hero side. Okay. And then on her alter ego side, that's where she has the ability to go in her deck or discard pile with the undercover work ability, look for a copy of Hunted and add it to your hand once per round. All right, so continuing on, then we have Throg, which gives you a chance to defend a couple of times and also do an attack or thwart, after you've defended. So that's really good because Tigra does only have 10 hit points, and we want to be able to allow some of these allies to stay in play a bit. So being able to have an ally that's cheap that can defend 2 times can be really handy. Two Gun Kid, very nice in here, being able to attack one of those minions, possibly defeat it to ready Tigra, and then also put some damage on the villain, or perhaps put a couple of points of damage on another minion and set them up to be defeated again later. And then Winter Soldier has a great ability of after they attack and defeat an enemy, then you get to remove 2 threat from a scheme, so it helps with that quite a bit too. And Yellow Jacket has both a 2 attack and 2 thwart, but also we have a fair number of upgrades, so it gives us a chance to get a card back after playing Yellow Jacket, and possibly being able to get, it gives you extra chances of getting hunted, but we have a lot of really good upgrades in here that we want to get into play as well. All right, and then for the events, we have 3 copies of Bring It. First time, so over here, my first time I ever played some cards in a deck, that I've included them in the deck. So Bring It is one of those cards. I had Hall of Heroes, but after 3 games, found that I just wasn't using Hall of Heroes, so I got rid of it. And then Aggressive Conditioning, another card, the first time that I've had in a deck. Blood Rage, also first time. Aggressive Stance, also first time. And then Moment of Triumph, which again, after 2 games there, I just wasn't getting the true benefit for it, and I felt like other cards just held more value for me and what I wanted to accomplish, so I also removed those. But I certainly tried, so it's kind of nice being able to try so many cards that I hadn't tried before in a deck, and 4 of them made the cut. And Bring It was a big one, so it's really cool. You're on your... You just start the beginning of your turn on your hero side. Tigra draws you some cards for some minions, and maybe you had a copy of Bring It in your hand already, or maybe you draw into a Bring It, and you can play one of these and then draw 1 card for each minion engaged with you. So very cool to have, a burst of card draw between Tigra's ability and Bring It. And then Face the Past, drawing us some more cards and really helping with setup a lot of the time. So being able to, and also get rid of the Nemesis minion, while the Nemesis minion isn't as bad to deal with. And her Nemesis minion isn't that bad to deal with overall. Only has 4 hit points, if I remember correctly. And then Press the Advantage, 3 copies of that, also for card draw. So the 3 copies of Bring It and 3 copies of Press the Advantage both add to the card draw. Press the Advantage was really nice for Tigra's deck because that 2 damage doesn't seem like much, but it tended to be I only needed 1 or 2 points of damage in order to defeat a minion and then trigger Hunted's ability that's attached to it and allow Tigra to ready. Or perhaps it's setting the minion up to be defeated next round. So you do 2 damage to that minion, and they're stunned because you put Hunted on them, or for some other reason. There are other abilities that do that in this deck too. And so they're stunned or confused, and you can draw a card. And sometimes it would be the villain, since the villain was confused at times as well. So it was very rare that I didn't get a chance to draw a card, or at a minimum, when I didn't get a chance to draw a card, usually I got a chance to ready Tigra again. And then only 1 player side scheme in this case. In other decks, I tended to have a different player side scheme, but I put in Keep the Pressure. Just makes sense in this particular deck. So it comes in for 0 cost with only 2 threat on it. And when defeated, each player may search their deck and discard power for an attack event and add it to their hand. And then until the end of the phase, each attack event deals 1 additional damage. Now, I did not find that I was utilizing this card. Like, even though it could come out for free, I didn't actually utilize it in every game, but it got utilized regularly enough. Great chance to get another one of those attack events. And in the game that I actually made a video of, where I have my demo gameplay, that'll be coming out probably a couple days after this video releases. You'll actually see that being utilized to finish off the villain. In this case, it was my first time playing Expert Iron Man, which was a really fun game, actually. I had a bit of a hard time with him in Standard. Came down to just 1 point a couple of times in that game. It was only saved by cat-like reflexes. So good thing I had those in play regularly in that particular game. And then got the double resources in here. And for the support, we only have Quinn Carrier added to the deck in support. And then for our upgrades, we have Aggressive Conditioning. So this was, as I mentioned before, my first time playing this card. So putting this card into a deck. So play under your player's control, max 1 player. You get +3 hit points and your hero gets +1 attack. That gave Tigra more flexibility in what she could accomplish. That extra point of damage was really nice. So especially, if you combine that with her one or two of her sharp claws in play, then she can gain overkill or piercing, and very often be able to, defeat whatever minions you needed to based on that total point value, right? Because she had two attack of her own, plus this makes 3. So starting off with 3 each time, and then using one of the short claws, making it 4 or possibly 5. And doing, like you could do, say, 4 damage twice, 8 damage is a pretty decent amount. And then 3 copies of the aggressive stance. So preparation, after you engage a minion, discard this card, search your deck for an attack event, and add it to your hand. So we're regularly defeating minions. However, one thing I did find is that, it's this is after you engage a minion, discard this card. So you had to make sure you're over on your hero side, because it's a hero response, and then you get a chance to search for that event. So very convenient for that. And then we also have Blood Rage that I mentioned before. Again, another card that I didn't play every game, but it had this response: after you defeat an enemy with a basic attack, exhaust Blood Rage and take 1 damage, draw a card. So sometimes her hit points were a bit too low to take the risk of using this card, so sometimes I just skipped playing it, or it just wasn't convenient to play. And then also Deft Focus, helping out with the superpower cards. I found it to be especially really convenient to put those cat-like reflexes in play. So it was really nice having Deft Focus in to be able to just throw cat-like reflexes in play and get that extra kind of insurance. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and see how the card did, how this deck did in the playtesting. So I went ahead and took her up against my usual Claw in Standard and Expert, and with my Expert House Rule that I utilized to make for consistent difficulty. And then we had Spider Woman, all of these, and I always play both in Standard and Expert. Magneto, for sure the toughest one, and then Iron Man. So I do want to get into why Magneto's so tough. I might even skip Magneto in some future plays with my Tigra playtesting. The one deck that was really able to handle those minions the best, and in against Magneto, was the one that I had for the protection deck, because you could put, I can't remember the name of the cards right now, but you could put those cards on there that just permanently reduce the attack of those minions. So those worked out pretty nicely. But overall, Magneto is a serious challenge. So I am used to playing Magneto a lot. For those of you who followed me, you know that already. And I'm used to my deck's doing quite well against Magneto. But Magneto's really challenging with utilizing the hunted card, and I had to be wise about the way I used it. So both in Standard and Expert, I lost my first game and then won the second game, and it always felt like a real battle. Now, what I did like was the added challenge that it was giving me. So that was really good to push myself and have to strategize a bit more in order to defeat Magneto in both of those, both Standard and Expert. But here's why it had a real issue. So I have some notes down here near the bottom. Okay. All right. So here's what makes Magneto especially challenging for Tigra is the combinations he has with his minions. So first of all, so all of them have some kind of deleterious when defeated ability that makes things challenging for you. On top of that, he has 2 magnetic missile treacheries, and 4 of those M-type Sentinel minions. So if you have utilized Hunted to put an M-type Sentinel minion in, and then Magnetic Missile goes in and defeats that minion, just kind of destroying your whole purpose and having it out there, and then deals 5 damage to you. And if she only has 10 hit points to begin with, then the only way to save herself is to discard cards from your hand to prevent X of that damage. So that alone makes it pretty challenging, and I had that happen to me multiple times when I was playing against Magneto. And then in addition to that, there are 5 acolytes, and all of those acolytes have teamwork. So if you put Hunted on one of the acolytes and another acolyte just naturally comes into play, they go ahead and trigger their ability right away and either attack or scheme against you. So I found that, plus, Magneto can be challenging to begin with. And so adding in that, you're supposed to be getting benefits from dealing with the minions when you're using Tigra, and instead you always felt like there was quite a bit of risk Plus, like all of those M-type minions, they have the 2 attack, 2 thwart, and 5 hit points. Not always easy to defeat them, right away. So I did find it very challenging against them. But the deck did dominate against all of the other heroes. For the most part, the first Iron Man battle in Standard was actually quite tough, like I mentioned. He has some pretty nice surprise cards that can make things difficult for you. And I actually thought I lost the game at first and then realized, oh, I have cat-like reflexes that saved me just from a surprise treachery that came out and triggered and would have done would have done 3 damage to me, and then that card just saved me. So Iron Man, I had to be careful with that too. But the second game, after practicing playing him in Standard, did much better and ended up being pretty darn dominant in that second game against him when I played him in Expert. So, but the amount of burst damage available in this deck, especially if you just did a bunch of card draw and you're able to draw into Tooth and Claw, can be pretty substantial. So if I look, again, go down to the results here, okay, and I'll just kind of look at my conclusion. Most of the games ended with a large burst of damage, ranging anywhere from 30 to 43 points, and I did 30 plus points multiple times to finish a game, and one game 43 points of damage at the end of it. So it's really cool to be able to set this up. It takes a little bit to set things up to make sure you have some good cards in play, and eventually get there. But you're able to do consistent damage to the villain throughout the game, so it doesn't take. The games don't usually last too long, although Magneto, again, can be a problem. But most of the games didn't last a real long time because you're able to continually chip away at the villain until you're ready for that big burst of damage. So in any case, I highly recommend trying out this deck or using some of what I have in here to inspire your own builds and see what you can put together. So go ahead and like and subscribe if you appreciate this type of content. That's greatly appreciated, and by myself as well. And I love it when people comment. So if you like commenting and having replies, I enjoy having conversations with people in the comment section. So everybody have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon.